In this video, I'm going to show you 10 common problems with these countertop or portable ice makers, and I'm going to show you how to fix them. I'm going to show you what the problem looks like when the machine is running, or at least when it's trying to run, and I'll show you what part has likely failed. And if your problem doesn't come up in this video, not to worry, because it is very likely that your problem has already been covered in a previous ice machine repair video about another 10 different problems and how to fix them. I've already published that video on the channel, and I'll leave a link to that in the description and at the top of the comments section. Also, not to worry if your ice machine does not look exactly the same as this one. They are basically all the same or very similar inside. They just look a little bit different on the outside. So no matter where you are in the world, this video should be able to help you. If you notice that your ice maker is leaking water, but when you look underneath, it's not leaking from the drain plug in the reservoir, but it looks like it's coming from inside the machine. It could be that the internal pipe that feeds water from the reservoir and up into the ice tray is leaking. And either the pipe has a hole in it or one of the connections have come off and that is leaking. And to fix this, you'll need to open up the machine and try and see where the water leak is coming from. Now, if there is nothing obvious when you look inside, you may need to remove the tube completely and take a closer look. To do this, I found it easier to remove the entire water pump and the tube together, and I'll show you how I did this later on in the video. And then check for any damage like cuts or holes, and also check if the pipe ends are pushed all the way onto the pipe. On my machine, these silicone ends are just pushed over the pipe and they are not glued. You can also check that the seal to the reservoir is in good condition, and if you need, get a new piece of pipe and reconnect both silicone ends to the pipe and to the pump's outlet and the inlet at the top of the machine. Now, the connections shouldn't be loose, but if they are, using a small cable tie to secure the ends might be a good option. If you look deep inside your ice machine where the silver prongs are, and you notice that water is only trickling or dribbling out the top, or you can hear the pump running but no water is coming out, or if the pump sounds like it's a little bit weak, it could be that the transfer pipe that feeds water from the reservoir and up into the top of the machine has become blocked, or maybe it is partially blocked due to a little bit of buildup of mineral scale from hard water, some mold, or some other type of contaminant. Or, like my machine, the pipe was actually being squeezed between the condenser coils and the reservoir. And to fix this, the pump and the transfer pipe may need to be removed so that any blockages can be cleaned out. Also, check that the outlet of the pump is open and the passage into the top of the machine is also clear. Now, there is a small screw that sticks into this pipe, and often this is where buildup of nasty stuff gets stuck, and you'll see some of this in the very next problem. And lastly, if your transfer pipe was also being pinched somewhere, have a close look at the area just to check that there's no damage to the pipe. So if your ice tray is only half or maybe partially filling with water, it could be that the water flow that we see is somewhat being deflected behind the ice tray. Now that can happen if you've got a lot of buildup. It could be sludge or mineral buildup on this little sensor wire, or inside the water outlet there is actually a sensor screw that can get buildup on it and have enough buildup to cause water to be deflected. Now I couldn't really recreate this because it takes a long time to build up, but it would be doing something very similar to the screwdriver where a lot of the water is being deflected behind the tray. And this has happened to this machine once before, a long time ago, but as I said, it does take quite a while to build up, and it was cleaned and it is working again. And also another viewer actually left a comment on another ice repair video that I've got on the channel saying that they had the same problem. And to fix this, you are going to need to clean the sensor wire and potentially clean that little screw inside the water outlet. And to gain access to the screw, the transfer pipe needs to be disconnected, and then I'm going to use a really small bottle brush that I found in the baby section at a pharmacy to stick into the hole and clean off any nasty stuff that's caught up in there. And in this case, luckily, there isn't much. But sometimes there is a lot of nasty, hairy, greenish, gunky stuff that can build up. If you turn on the machine and the tray moves up into position like normal and water pumps for a couple of seconds, maybe 30 to 60 seconds, and then the machine dumps the water and the add water light turns on and the machine sits there and does nothing. It may be that the machine is not sensing the flow of water. Now, I did bring this problem up in a previous ice machine video where Foxhole 777 experienced this issue, but there was an interesting twist. The sensor wire on that machine was bent out of the water flow, and it was also catching on the ice tray as the tray moved back and forth, and a clicking sound could be heard. And in this case, I guess simply bending the wire back into the water flow and away from the tray solved the problem. The sensor wire in the correct position should be screwed down, pass through the hole in the plastic and stick down into the center of the water flow. Or at least that's what it looks like on my machine. Now, could it have been defective or installed incorrectly at the factory? Well, I guess that is a possibility. Or could it have been mistakenly bent while cleaning? That was kind of my initial thought, but maybe not. It is a pretty stiff wire. If a bent sensor wire isn't the problem with your machine, it could also be that there's a buildup of debris on the sensing wire or the little sensing screw, as I mentioned before, and that's kind of insulating it from the water and preventing it from sensing the flow of water, and this needs to be cleaned off. Or this is less likely, but also not impossible, that one of the wires that connect to the sensor wire or the sensor screw inside the machine have corroded or broken off and it needs to be reconnected. If you've stored your ice maker for a long time, even if it was cleaned and dried before storage, and you turn it on, the ice tray moves up like normal, but no water flows into the tray, and you can't hear the water pump running. But it was working before storing the machine. It could be that hard water has dried inside the pump, leaving a bit of limescale or mineral deposits that has jammed up the pump's impeller. Or if you used vinegar to clean your machine before storing it and you didn't properly rinse it out with clean water, the pump's shaft could have become rusted, causing the impeller to be jammed. Or if the machine was recently working and all of a sudden it's not pumping anymore, it could have sucked up a little bit of debris like a piece of hair through the inlet screen and into the pump's impeller, which is causing it to get jammed. And to fix this, I've heard of people pouring a mix of 1 part water and 1 part vinegar into the reservoir and leaving it soak for around 30 to 60 minutes. And this might help to dissolve the mineral buildup enough to allow the pump to turn again. Now, you do need to be really careful if you decide to try this on your machine, because this water vinegar mix, if it's left to soak for too long, it can cause the metal parts inside the pump to corrode. Or if the pump freeze up and the mix is allowed to continue cycling through the machine and over those silver freezing prongs, it can also damage those. So do this at your own risk. Now, if I were to do this, I wouldn't leave the mix in for more than 30 minutes, and I would drain the mix and rinse the machine thoroughly using plain water. I'd also allow the plain water to cycle through the machine a few times just to make sure that all traces of vinegar have been removed. If that doesn't work, removing and disassembling the pump to break it free and clean it might be a better option. If you turn on your ice maker, the tray moves up and fills water like normal. The fan turns on like normal, but you don't hear the compressor kicking in or running. And after the cycle, you notice the machine has not made any ice. So if this is the case, it could be that the PTC start relay has failed, so the compressor can't start up. Or it could be that the compressor's overload protector has also gone faulty and it is also not allowing the compressor to start up. Or that there is no power being supplied to the compressor when it's supposed to be running, or the compressor itself could have failed internally. Now luckily both the PTC start relay and the overload protector can easily be tested, and if these have failed they can normally be bought as individual parts or they can be bought in a kit. Now if both the PTC start relay and the overload protector test good and power is actually being supplied to the compressor when it is supposed to be running, that then points towards the compressor being faulty, and an HVAC technician will likely need to assist you with that type of repair. Or if it is a cheaper option, just go ahead and replace the entire machine. Now this is more of a technical fault find and repair type of scenario, so I think it is actually best that you don't try this at home. Rather get assistance from somebody that is competent with working on electronics. And I might end up making another more in-depth video about how I went about testing these parts. And if I do, I'll leave a link to that video in the description. So if your arch tray doesn't move, or maybe it doesn't move consistently between the normal up and down positions, it could be that the little D-shaped plastic junction between the servo motor and the arch tray is cracked, or the entire arch tray is split and the servo motor can't actually move the tray consistently to trigger the little limit switches. Now most arch machines should have this little metal ring that helps support the plastic, but as you can see in this case it didn't stop it from cracking. But at least it is still holding everything together and this machine does still work. And unfortunately there is no replacement part that I know of, but I have heard of people plastic welding or even 3D printing a plastic insert and then gluing it into place. Now I'm not sure exactly how long this will last though, but if you need to repair your arch tray, you may need to come up with some creative repair. If the add water light flashes as soon as the ice maker is plugged into a power outlet, even before the machine is turned on, it could be that the temperature sensor inside the machine has gone faulty. And as you can see in my machine, it hangs freely in the case, but on others I believe it could be attached in this location. And to temporarily get around this, I unplug the temperature sensor from the circuit board and the light still flashes, but the machine does turn on and it goes through an ice making cycle of around 9 minutes and it successfully makes ice. Now to fix this properly, you'll need to test or replace the temperature sensor. Now unfortunately, there are no markings to identify this little part, but after taking some measurements, the sensor in my machine is a 10K NTC thermistor, which is being used as a temperature sensor, and you should be able to buy this online. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a starting point as to what your sensor could be. If you need to test your temperature probe, here's a random chart for what resistance a 10K NTC thermistor should measure at various temperatures. And mine reads 6.77 kilo ohms at 97 degrees Fahrenheit or 36.1 degrees Celsius, and 10.17 kilo ohms at 77 degrees Fahrenheit or 25 degrees Celsius, which is the reference temperature, and 16.9 kilo ohms at 53 degrees Fahrenheit or 11.5 degrees Celsius, which I think is reasonably close enough to be considered good. Now I'm not sure if this is the only indication that causes the add water light to flash when the machine is plugged in but it's not yet turned on, but it's the indication that I get on my machine, and hopefully it is able to give you some direction if you've got a similar problem. Now something that might be related to this problem is the next problem that I'm going to mention. If your machine's ice making or freezing cycle is taking longer than it normally does, or possibly it's taking shorter than it normally does, it could be that your machine is being affected by the ambient air temperature in and around the machine, or the temperature of the water in the reservoir, or the machine is measuring these temperatures incorrectly, which causes the freezing cycle time to change. So similar to the previous problem, if the temperature sensor is going faulty, or it's come loose from where it's supposed to be mounted and something inside the machine is causing the probe to heat up or cool down, it could be fooling the machine to thinking that it's hotter than it actually is, resulting in a longer cycle time and very large ice blocks. Or on the flip side, it could be that the machine thinks it's colder than it actually is, resulting in a shorter cycle time and very small ice blocks. Now, I did some testing with my machine by artificially cooling the temperature probe to 1 degree, and the freezing cycle ran for about 6 minutes. And when I heated the probe up to around 50 degrees, the freezing cycle ran for 12 minutes, all while the air temperature in the room was around 24 degrees Celsius. And the fix for this is to test and possibly replace the temperature probe as I previously mentioned, or at least check if it hasn't come loose from where it is supposed to be mounted. On the other hand, if you notice long cycle times with low ice output and there is no other faults inside the machine, come to think about it, you may actually want to check this first. It could be that your machine is not getting enough airflow, or it's recirculating hot air back through the condenser coils because maybe it's really hot and humid where you are and the machine is either too close to other appliances or because it's tucked into a corner or a nook. And luckily the fix for this is pretty simple. Just give the machine more room to breathe at the back and the sides. And what I like to do is I like to remove the buckets and let the ice recirculate back into the reservoir. This way the water gets much cooler and this results in larger and better ice blocks being formed. Although this does take a couple of cycles to eventually get going and take full effect. Now please remember, I did say if there are no other faults inside the machine. But there could be a few other things that also affect the ice output, like if the fan isn't working properly, or if the condenser coils are blocked or partially blocked, or if the compressor is starting to fail. But I did cover these in a previous video about another 10 common problems with these countertop ice makers, and I'll leave a link to that video at the end of this video and also in the video description. So make sure you go and check that out because it is quite an interesting and helpful video. If your ice machine makes a squeaking or a creaking sound when the ice tray moves up or down, or the ice tray doesn't move freely like this one, because most machines will have a small amount of free play like this. It could be that the small metal ring at the end of the ice tray is rusted and it's causing the ice tray to kind of jam up between the two plastic supports. Now yeah, I've loosened and lifted the top plastic support and there's now a gap between the metal ring and the plastic. And normally this gap is closed when the top cover is screwed down. And this is where the ice tray kind of jams up and it causes that squeaking or creaking, especially if the plastic is dry. And to fix this, if your metal ring is rusted, you'll need to take the ice maker apart and remove the ice tray so that the metal ring can be removed and then the rust cleaned off. And to help prevent it from rusting again, you could try applying some food-safe silicone grease to the ring. And I'll leave a link to some of this food-safe silicone grease in the description if that's something that you'd like to pick up. Now, if your metal ring isn't rusted, but it looks like the ice tray is still not moving smoothly between its up and its down positions, it could be that the servo motor's output shaft is rusted and it's jammed, because this also commonly happens when water makes its way back in here. But I did cover this in a previous 10 common problems and how to fix them video, and I'll leave a link to that video in the description. And it also should pop up on screen right here. And I highly recommend that you go and watch this video because I really think you'll find it useful. I'd also really appreciate it if you shared this video with any friends or family or anybody that you know that's got one of these machines, because you might be able to help them by saving them a lot of money or frustration if they are experiencing problems with their machine and they need to fix it. If you found the video useful, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and please tell us about the problems that you've experienced. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time. Cheers.